What's it like to make a career out of traveling to hot zones around the world, protecting celebrities and other important people as an executive protection specialist? We're going to talk about that and dealing with post-traumatic stress with Byron Rodgers, an executive protection specialist from Orange County, California. That's coming up on the Hot Zone.
I live every single day with death in the back of my mind because after getting blown up in Iraq that last time, that became my reality. Now the game is to live my life in a way that I can be proud the next time I'm dying, because I know I did everything in my power to make sure that the grace that was given to me was not in vain by the grace of God.
Folks, today I want to talk about post-traumatic stress, and with basically America is involved in its longest war in history. And we're seeing some movement now in Afghanistan that might actually lead to us being able to bring the majority of our troops home. But there have been so many years where we've had troops over there that America's kind of forgotten about the war. They've forgotten that we've got troops serving in harm's way. But there's a lot of guys coming back, and they're struggling. They're struggling to reintegrate into society. We've talked about this a lot on the podcast. So I want to bring in my friend Byron Rodgers. He's an executive protection specialist and a former Marine he's down at Camp Pendleton and has done some combat tours in Afghanistan himself. Is that right, Byron?
Yes, sir. 2 deployments to Iraq. Thanks for having me, first and foremost.
Yeah.
It's an honor to be here. It's an honor to talk about these things. So I thank you.
Well, let's do that. Let's talk a little bit about Afghanistan and Iraq. Tell me about your experience first. When were you there? What did you experience? And what was it like trying to reintegrate when you got back?
So I was in from 08, from 04 to 08. And I went over twice. One was a float, was only 3 months in country, and the other one was a combat deployment. And, it just all depends on the tools we have. For me, getting out of the Marine Corps, keeping the Marine Corps and my infantry experience there, and the IEDs and the buddies and us fighting and that brotherhood, keeping that as the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life. And making that the backdrop for everything else I've had to do in my life, I believe has given me quite a bit of strength and stamina and focus. So kind of my ethos has really been around, hey man, we should go hard for government, for America. Now we're here doing, in the battle for our lives in the 1st Civilian Division, and the game, I got to be able to hit this trash harder than I did, for those other things. I got a full night's rest, what I mean? Like I'm warm, so I'm not cold, miserable, and wet, so I think because I framed it that way in my mind, it has actually propelled me quite a bit into my kind of the things I've been trying to do as a civilian. And When I see guys that are suffering, I find very often that they've lost that mentality. They kind of lose their way. They stop looking at life that way. The ease, nothing will bring you closer to destruction than comfort. It's kind of like eating them, wearing them down,
Right. That's a really good point. And one thing about facing all that hardship and misery is that you're doing it in the company of other good men. And you have this driving sense of purpose that propels you forward, that gets you out of bed in the morning. And it enables you to face the difficulty and the being away from your family and the danger. But when you get back and it just feels like that purpose has gone away, I just wonder if some guys claim to have post-traumatic stress when in reality what it is kind of more like culture shock. They've gone from this place where they had a driving purpose, they were doing important work with important people, and they were seeing the results of their labor right there. It was so meaningful. And then they get back and they're sitting around watching TV and they're playing video games and and they see the rest of the world involving itself in those kind of passive activities. And it's just frustrating. It's just like, I remember coming back from combat and going to McDonald's one time and just kind of looking around at everybody and going, it's just a bunch of fat people that are taking this very precious gift. I mean, I just watched my buddies being killed for, and I just got a very hard lesson in the price of freedom, how valuable it is.
Right.
And then I come home and these people are just sitting on it, on that freedom and using
Yeah.
it to pad their backsides while they eat another cheeseburger. And it
Right.
wasn't their fault. I mean, in
No,
reality,
no.
this is just again, it's culture shock. It's my going from that culture into American culture, where it is very comfortable and it is very easy and it is very safe, and people take that for granted, and you just want to shake them and go like, don't you realize how costly this is? Did you feel that way?
Yeah, 100%. It's part of the reason why I've done a lot of my work. I would say that it's like working on a Lamborghini engine and then being forced to drive in a school zone, for the rest of your life, or like going from like, yeah, we got the whole vegetarian carnivore thing going, but like maybe you like really love steak and now you're like forced to be a vegetarian, or like it's like being forced to watch cartoons forever, forever.
Yeah, that's right.
But
Exactly. I heard one
life
guy
is so
say,
rich.
I feel like a meat eater that's being fed a steady diet of cabbage.
Yeah,
So,
literally, man.
yeah.
And so with regards to the culture shock of it all, man, I feel like Viktor Frankl was right when he said there should be a statue of responsibility on the other side of the coast to match the Statue of Liberty, because liberty without purpose, it generally equals death. You have this chaos and order balance you must maintain. And so kind of one of the things I talk about is finding your new fight. And that, I think, is the most important thing. A warrior needs a war. A warrior needs a battle. They need a fight. And fighting the fight of personal development and being the best you can is one of the most honorable endeavors. But beyond that, really, like knowing that, hey, no one's going to have your back like your brothers did. That can make that culture shock even worse, And so a lot of guys, I believe, they suffer from what I call the atrophy of identity. And so you come back, you don't realize how important it is to find a mission. And then you start playing the video games and you start drinking and eating and being merry, and you're telling your wife the same combat stories. And after a while, she doesn't care. And after a while, you look in the mirror and you don't even look like you could be the guy in this story. And then it starts to take a toll on your personal purpose. What do we do with things that we don't have a purpose for? They get misused, abused, and eliminated. You don't know what something does. You say, hey, honey, what is this thing? I don't know. Throw it away, So I feel like this is happening with veterans' lives after they get back, because they fail to see the meaning of finding a new mission. And then your identity. I was even just a squad leader. I had lives in my hands. I was running. And now I'm here in the 1st Civilian Division. I can't find my value anymore. And this, I believe, is what causes a lot of guys to tap out before they end up killing themselves. And then I believe it's even worse inside of the non-combat centric MOSs, because, I don't feel like they have the grit, and the ethos that brings us together. We bleed together. We sweat together. So some of us, we try to deal with our burdens by ourselves, but then we still have that support network of guys that'll like get on a plane today to come get you if you say you need it. Mm-hmm. But out there, in those other MOSs, I don't know that they have the fabric and brotherhood that we forge in battle. And on top of that, I think it might be a different type of human being that goes after those types of MOSs largely. And that's why we see a difference in the actual numbers with combat related, suicidality and non-combat related.
That's really fascinating. Great stuff. That is really fascinating. I'm really glad we got to talk about this. So you're right. I mean, you look at these guys that, for all intents and purposes, got to guard a concrete block while they were over there. And that's not to say anything negative about them. It wasn't their choice. I bet most of those guys, if they had the choice between guarding the concrete block and going out and shooting bad guys in the face, would gladly go shoot bad guys in the face. But that's just not the way the military works these days.
Right,
and having just come back from Afghanistan a couple of months ago, I can tell you that it's getting worse. It's not getting better. Because of the political capital that's expended every time a U.S. troop gets killed. The military has become very risk averse, and they really do not want to allow our guys to go out and prosecute the battle. They don't want them to go out and chase down the enemy and kill him. That's not what they're about anymore. There's a very small faction of special ops guys that are allowed to do that, maybe from time to time. But when I've been with them, they even complain that, look, we'll have good intel, we'll have a definite target full of bad guys. We could really make a difference if we can go take those guys out. And the problem is the decision gets passed up the chain all the way until it hits a no. It just keeps going. Nobody wants to just
take responsibility
and go, yeah, just do it. They just keep passing it up the chain of command until somebody goes, why are you bothering me? No. And there might be, this, or there might be that. You get these armchair quarterbacks that just want to find the reason why it won't work. And my career, my star might get in jeopardy if something goes wrong. So they would much rather you guys be here but not do much than actually be going out and kicking butt and taking names every day. Yeah, and that's really unfortunate. I came away from this last trip to Afghanistan so disgusted because of the institutional timidity that I see constantly over and over and over again, where it used to be big boy country. It used to be, look, get the job done. Here's your mission. Here's what victory looks like. Go make it happen. And it's not like that anymore. These guys don't have a definition of victory. They've not been given that by our politicians. That's not the military's fault. Right. And so it has become sort of a factory for getting your combat tour under your belt so that you can get your promotion. When it comes to the flag officer corps and general officer corps. And that we call it the greater flagpole theory. It's like the more flagpoles they put up over there, the stupider everything gets. Not to mention the fact that many of the people who are actually commanding those units are not American troops anymore. They're German or Belgian or French or Italian or something like that. And they have totally different rules of engagement, totally different risk tolerances. And because of that, our guys are left guarding the concrete block. That's very frustrating for our guys. I talked to several guys in this last trip who said, I've been here 6 months and I've never been outside the wire. I mean, what's the point?
Right, it's impossible even there. Jeez.
Right.
And that's wild.
Tell me about Executive Protection Lifestyle. What is it that your company does?
So Executive Protection Lifestyle is a podcast, and really it's moving into my personal security company, Bravo Research Group. We're a boutique private security company out here in Southern California. But the way that kind of ties into EPL is the podcast, and then now I have a digital product that I'm using to help professionals learn how to get into private security, market themselves, do the work, and have fruitful careers, which is important to me because as a Marine, I was getting out and I was like, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to survive? It's like, I got to go hold a gun for somebody. Yeah. It's like, so law enforcement wasn't my path. Contracting overseas wasn't my path, but domestic private security contracting and executive protection ended up being my path. And it's all I've ever done since 21.
Wow. That's fantastic. And what kind of client, I mean, you're doing more like hands-on executive protection rather than like facilities security or venue security or things like that, or what?
It's really all of it. It's all kind of been rolled up into one. So you get one principal and they're like, hey, we're going to go to the whatever dome and have my live event. And as an executive protection agent, you end up facilitating and managing all the operation from the time we leave that door at their house to the jet to landing in that new environment to the venue and all the way back. And that's kind of where we get in the difference between bodyguards and executive protection agents, or, the site security guys. Those are the guys just at that site, versus the actual agent. The executive protection agent is like managing the whole entire operation.
That makes sense. Okay. And so where have you been doing this job? I mean, have you got to travel overseas some, or has it mostly just been CONUS?
Yeah. So when I got picked up on my first detail at 21, I got on probably one of the largest traveling details in the United States. We hit over 60 countries in about a year and a half. And I was like, that's pretty conservative, because my first client was moving. We were home for maybe a week, a month. And then I did that on repeat for 7 years. So I just like grew up in this game, kind of learning it, like trying to drink out of a fire hose kind of. And then And then I did that for about 7 years, wanted to be normal, and pulled away from that and did what we called chase the pager and worked for a number of different boutique private security companies here in Cali. And that gave me a lot of experience with pretty much every client demographic our industry has to offer that I'm aware of. And so that's all I've been doing. And then in the last 3 years, I started my company and really just been working on that and building my books and getting connected with the right people, really. It's been great, you know.
So we have probably been in a lot of the same places then. I mean, if you've, I don't know how many hot zones you guys travel to, but it's not uncommon for me to have to hire somebody like you when I go into, Somalia or Sudan or someplace like that. But at the same time, I think that, I don't know, many of your clients probably need security just going to California or just going to Europe or someplace like that. What do you think?
So it's a very interesting dynamic because in that trick, aggressive is the posture, right? And in the executive protection industry, it's more like you can really end up being a babysitter if on some details.
Yeah, door shaker,
details,
right?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes they just want you there so they feel cool, and so they feel cooler than the other guy. Other details, there's actually a legitimate threat level, and we're actually whipping it on, doing what we're doing. And so it's kind of funny. You get really a full spectrum. Sometimes it's just you're really just there to handle logistics. Other times you're just feeding the dogs and like,
hey man, I'll make you feel as cool as you want to feel as long as you pay me.
Yeah, exactly. So it's it's not like ultra ninja secret squirrel stuff all the time, but I'd say the positives are you get amazing access. You get a lot of really cool experiences. I've seen the best hotels and lived on jets, and I got to work the inauguration for Trump this last time, and that was beautiful to see our country in that way, the inner workings of the country and all these places you read about. But you have to manage your ego because you can start thinking the client success is your success if you're not careful, or thinking that you've made it and things like this. And you have to just make sure you keep the right perspective on things because.
So how do you do that? How do you stay humble?
You know what? I really take it back to the Marine Corps. Every time I woke up in combat, I'd be like, hey man, this could be the day, that I get smoked, and I'm just going to do my best to make sure me and my guys get back. And when I go to work an executive protection detail, I honestly think to myself, hey, you get fired today, bro. You could take a wrong turn. You could read your mapping correctly, take a wrong turn. Client might think you're incompetent, even though you've worked for him for 7 years and been awesome. And then that's it. Or some social, you could find yourself in the middle of a social incident because you said something that the wife didn't like 3 months ago, and that's it. So I keep myself, knowing that on a large level, my provisions come from the Lord I serve, one, and two, that humility is going to keep me in a position where my blind spots, I don't overlook my blind spots, man, because I've seen a lot of guys be like, yo, I work for such and such celebrity, and they think they made it, and they think they're like family to the celebrity. And it's like, no, buddy, this individual has been getting people that render this service for years, and you're just the flavor of the month. You're just like the new car that they got last week that they really like right now. And in a few months, we'll be trading it in or giving it to some cousin or something, so. And then I've seen the carnage of that. I've just seen the destruction of guys.
Yeah, me too.
Think they've made it, and the next thing you know, it changes on them. And by the grace of God, I've had enough time to see that and build it into my psychology that, like, hey, this is a real thing. You got to stay grounded. Otherwise, you're going to make a mistake that can cost you everything.
Well, so Byron Rodgers, tell people how they can find out more about you and about your work and the training that you do.
Oh, thanks so much. So you can find me at byronrodgers.com. That's Rodgers with a D. That's my website. My podcast is executiveprotectionlifestyle.com, Executive Protection Lifestyle. And you can find that at executiveprotectionlifestyle.com, or also all of it through my website, byronrodgers.com. I'm on Instagram, a lot of stuff on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. My book, Finding Meaning After the Military, it's on Amazon, but you can also find it at my website, byronrodgers.com. And then the Executive Protection Training Day Success Package. That you can find also through my website or executiveprotectiontrainingday.com. So those are all my my digital properties.
Great. Well, thank you for being a part of the Hot Zone today, and I really appreciate it. I feel like we're, separated at birth practically. We've got a lot in common. When I get to heaven, I just want to say, I want to look just like you.
Yeah, right.
I just want to be big, black, and bald.
Oh man.
I'm jealous. But so it's great getting to know you a little bit, and I hope we can have you on again soon.
Awesome. It would be an honor. Thank you so much for, allowing me to come in here and say some things, you and your tribe, Chuck. I really appreciate what you're doing and believe in what you're doing. And I also commend you on being willing to have some hard conversations. I think the world needs a lot more of that stuff. So it's an honor to be here. I appreciate you.
All right. Thanks a lot. All right, folks, that's all we've got for the Hot Zone today. Thanks for being a part of it. Share it with your friends. Like us on Facebook, and make sure you watch the podcast over on YouTube. We'll see you back here again next time. Take care. All right.
Outstanding.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.